Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today with a Bethesda news update. According to Bethesda, they have to change the way they approach single player games, and you don't say, there's been quite a bit of change.
Fallout 76 is entirely online.
The following information comes from that same interview by The Guardian that I had covered the other day when talking about Obsidian ever working on the Fallout franchise again. It happened to be a bit I had missed until it was pointed out by mynintendonews.com. They will also be linked down below. Bethesda are well known for their meaty single-player titles such as the Elder Scrolls series, Wolfenstein, and Fallout, etc. UK news publication The Guardian caught up with Pete Hines, Bethesda's senior VP of PR and marketing, to talk about the beloved company and its future plans. While the meaty single-player component won't be going away, he says that they need to change how they approach things going forward. That doesn't mean that we should keep doing things the way we did 5 or 10 years ago. We've got to continue to change how we approach it. So when I first read this from My Nintendo News, I thought, that's a little bit vague for such an important question to be asked. So I went back to The Guardian, and here is the full quote that we can really get into. Nonetheless, Hines is bullish about the future of epic single-player adventures. Well, we will keep doing it, he says. There was a lot of hand-wringing around 2017's Prey, but we just announced a huge update, aka Moon Crash. Rage 2 is a giant single-player game. The next Doom game, Doom Eternal, is single-player, and Wolfenstein Youngblood is single-player. Single-player is still a thing. It might continue to grow or evolve, but it's part of who we are, and we still think there's room to be successful. That doesn't mean that we should keep doing things the way that we did them 5 or 10 years ago. We got to continue to change how we approach it. So I feel like there was almost an instant miscommunication or interpretation off the bat, considering that he's talking about Moon Crash's update being single-player, but a part of that update is the Mimic multiplayer mode. Doom Eternal will naturally have a multiplayer mechanic, and Wolfenstein has a co-op mechanic. So while yes, these have single player portions, it was more so Bethesda's new multiplayer focus after airing a commercial saying save player one. Pretty much fans are getting mixed signals and people want answers as to where Bethesda's heading in the future. I think that's the second part of the sentence that gives us the most answers about how it's still a thing that they want to continue to grow and evolve, as well as them thinking there is still room for it to be successful, which is oddly business talk for Bethesda, where usually they're like, we love single player games, we play those games, and because we play those games, we like to make them. This was, like I said, a little bit more along the lines of standard PR speak, which is very unlike them. However, I don't want to split hairs here or play stupid, because I think what they're mainly saying here when they go, we want to change how we approach it, is when we look 5 or 10 years ago at Bethesda, they were an awful publisher. They were the company that had Bethesda Game Studios, their hallmark studio, and then they would publish titles like Rogue Warrior. Do you remember this game? It was terrible.
If you're a pussy, select this one.
The great leader must have a tiny dick. Suck my balls, my hairy fucking big balls, wrap them around your fucking mouth.
Probably the best game that they did publish during that worst point in time was, I think it was called Wet. That game was awesome, but outside of that, they'd have mediocre games like Hunted the Demon's Forge, just whatever titles, or straight up bad. So I get where they're coming from, where they want to change how they approach it, because when they did beforehand, they've now become one of the most renowned publishers in the industry and have consecutively won awards for being the best publisher in the industry and continuing to bring quality to games, as well as giving developers the time they need to make what they want. When I started looking into this response, some of the comments, some of the discussion on it, I noticed a lot of apprehension, like, whoa, change. And that's been an issue a lot with gaming as of recently. We've seen pretty big series receive dramatic changes, most notably for us here on the channel, Fallout 76 versus the entire Fallout franchise. I say this only to remain open-minded, because most of you know I'm not hot on Fallout 76, and I respect them for having the money and saying, let's keep trying to experiment, finding new ways to have fun, rather than staying stale and becoming old, because that's when a series truly goes to shit. And I know it's subjective with Fallout. Some think it went to shit with 3, something it went to shit with 4, something it's gonna go to shit with 76. I get it. We got a lot of hot takes here, but all I'm saying is I personally, at least at the very minimum, respect their ability to experiment and try new things for gamers, especially when they're making lots of money. All right, these games as a service titles underneath Bethesda like ESO, ES Legends, and most notably Fallout Shelter, and then the upcoming Elder Scrolls Blades, they are cash cows for this company, okay? They can very much remain where they stand, so I do admire their focus on progressing. Not to say that experimentation is always going to lead them to success. Sometimes it's good to remember the DNA of your franchise, but I do fear that with that evolution, could they lose a sense of identity? That's what I'm gonna wait and see on, because like I said, we're seeing the multiplayer being added to a lot of games here. I don't know if Bethesda's trying to make the slow transition, then get that big multiplayer hit game and make a whole 100% change on their company's philosophy while everyone's hyped, if that even ends up being the case. But those are just my thoughts on a little bit of a snippet that I had missed originally in this Guardian interview. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, as well as the direction Bethesda's heading in and what you think they could do to evolve single player games and multiplayer games. Fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, like me on Facebook. Those links are in the description down below, along with my Patreon. Do consider supporting that, as it fuels all the content we create here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.